There is a rule about military hardware that almost everybody has absorbed without ever being told it. Things get more expensive, not gradually, and not merely with inflation, but relentlessly, generation after generation. A single fighter aircraft today costs more than a whole squadron did within living memory. Nobody planned that. It simply happens the way rust happens. Now, I should say where I stand, because this video is going to end with an opinion. I think the program I'm about to describe is the most interesting thing happening in defense procurement right now, and that almost nobody is covering it as the thing it actually is. It is not really a drone story, it is an accounting story, and the accounting is the weapon. Because the arithmetic of modern warfare has quietly inverted. For most of the last century, the expensive thing destroyed the cheap thing, and that was rather the point of being rich. Now, a device costing a few $1,000s can destroy a vehicle costing several million, and the side with the better economics is not necessarily the side with the better equipment. And if you asked most people what the Pentagon's big drone push is about, they would say artificial intelligence, or swarms, or autonomy. But you know what? That is not the interesting part of it. The interesting part is written into the contract structure. Somebody sat down and designed a program whose entire purpose is to force a weapon to get cheaper on a schedule. So here is what we are going to do. First, why cost itself has become the battlefield. Then, the four-stage machine that has been built to drive a price downwards. And finally, the big one. The strangest requirement in the whole program, and the thing nobody says out loud about whether any of it will work. First up, the normal direction of travel. In conventional procurement, a program starts with a requirement. The requirement grows, the unit price rises, the quantity ordered falls in order to protect the budget, and the smaller quantity pushes the unit price up again. Everyone inside defense knows this loop intimately. It has a shape, and the shape only ever goes one way. Now the object itself. A small one-way attack drone is exactly what the name says it is. It flies to a target and it does not come home. The requirement here specifies that it must carry at least 4.4 pounds of explosive and that it has to work both across open ground and inside a city, which are very different problems for something that has to see where it is going. And the reason anyone wants hundreds of thousands of them is the exchange rate. If your opponent has to spend a missile worth 6 figures to stop something worth 4, you win that trade even though you lose the drone. Every single time. The cheap thing does not have to survive. It only has to cost less than whatever gets used to stop it. So, the program. It is called the Drone Dominance Program, and it is worth about $1.1 billion, which in defense terms is close to a rounding error. For that money, the department intends to field roughly 340,000 small attack drones. And it is structured in a way I have genuinely not seen before. There are 4 phases, and they are not called phases. They are called gauntlets. In each one, manufacturers bring real hardware. Military operators run that hardware through mission scenarios, and the ones that survive the scenarios receive the orders. Each gauntlet is independent of the one before it, which means that winning one buys you nothing at all in the next. Gauntlet 1 has already run. 25 manufacturers were selected to compete for an initial $150 million in delivery orders. The target for that phase is 30,000 drones, at roughly $5,000 each. Gauntlet 2 ran at Camp Grayling in Michigan, and by then the field had grown considerably. 49 companies, bringing 79 distinct aircraft, competing against the same kind of scenarios. That growth is the mechanism doing its job. The prize is visible, so more people turn up to fight over it. And here is where the design really shows itself. Gauntlet 3 raises the order to 100,000 drones and drops the target price to 3,000 each. Gauntlet 4 raises the order again to 150,000 and drops the price again to 2,300. So read that as a curve rather than as a list. $5,000, then 3,000, then 2,300. The quantity climbs and the price is required to fall as the quantity climbs. That is not a forecast of what a market might eventually do. It is a condition of the contract, which is a genuinely clever piece of design because it borrows the one thing that defense procurement almost never has, which is a real market. Nobody is guaranteed anything. The volume is the incentive. The competition between gauntlets is the enforcement, and the price target is published in advance so that no vendor can pretend to be surprised by it later. And then, this month, the department went looking for something else again. Inside the same effort, it has opened a search for small one-way attack drones that are also reusable. Read that sentence a second time because it contains a contradiction the program has decided to live with deliberately. A one-way attack drone is defined by the fact that it does not come back. A reusable one comes back whenever it does not find anything worth hitting. What is really being asked for is a weapon that can work out, in flight, whether today is the day it gets spent. And honestly, this is where I become skeptical, and I want to be precise about why. Announcing a price target is the easy half of the job. Defense programs have been announcing unit cost targets for as long as there have been defense programs, and the graveyard of those announcements is enormous. A number written into a solicitation is a hope with a budget line attached to it. The hard part is a supply chain that can genuinely deliver 150,000 of anything at a fixed low price on a fixed date without one critical component that somebody else controls. Now, to be fair to the program, its own published timetable has been stated publicly as both 2027 and 2028, depending on which statement you happen to read. That is not necessarily dishonesty. That is what a schedule looks like while it is still being negotiated with reality. And cheap, at-a-table hardware is one of the few areas where the industrial base really can move quickly, because none of the parts are exotic. But there is a harder objection, and it has nothing to do with manufacturing. It is that a very large number of cheap attacking things invites a very large number of cheap defending things, and that the exchange rate, which looks so favorable today, is exactly the sort of advantage that gets competed away. Everybody can read the same arithmetic. Nobody gets to keep this particular trait to themselves for very long. But I think the thing worth taking from all of this is not really about drones. For roughly 80 years, military advantage was bought by making each individual object more capable than the last one and paying whatever that happened to cost. This program is an explicit bet in the opposite direction, that the decisive quantity is quantity, and that the discipline required is not engineering brilliance, but the ability to build something deliberately less impressive for less money at enormous scale. That is a very different institutional skill. And it is not at all obvious that institutions built for the first thing can do the second. So the number to watch here is not 340,000, it is 2,300. If that price is actually met in the final phase, then something real has changed about how this system builds things, and the drones themselves are almost beside the point. And if it is not met, then this will have been the most expensive demonstration yet of a very old rule. Things get more expensive